They go west, they go east, they go north, they go south. Right.
I don't know if you could hear us. We are live. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. If you could hear us, let us know. We're trying to play music in the background, but I don't know if you can hear it. Oh my goodness. This is such a... Today is what? Knowledge culture? Culture. Wow. Right. Loud and clear. Greedy smack in your leg.
This is we go. We bring divine wine right from the source. Water to wine.
Nice.
From my new warrior crew, it birthed from my new big body girls, it birthed from my new.
There are a few people in the chat. Those of you who are with us reading. Moreyah. I'm doing what you doing. Right. Are you right here with us?
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome.
So groovy, it's a nice easy way to go to Sabbath.
But we still not forgotten. Yes, we scatter.
Shabbat Shalom, Emma Sequoia, Marjorie Marie, Master Menelek.
We scatter. No matter.
Right. Greetings. Got in the house. Big up yourself.
Shabbat Shalom, Chief Yuya, Aki Isaiah.
If you don't know where you're from, talk to your elder. If you don't know where
Sure you have elders talk
to your elder. We build the kingdom. A million.
All right. Peace, everyone. Yes, that's right. Right here. You found the place. If you are looking for a place, if you are looking for a home, for refinement, for power, for truth, you are in the space, right? Chief, you created this space, y'all. So, yeah. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I will that you enjoyed our musical intro today, right here on time. And it's great to see all the beautiful Anu people in the chat and those of you who are joining us later on, much later on, in the near future, all of that. We are grateful. So as we greet you, more than anything else, we want to greet you all in the name of our Elohim, right? We want to greet you in the name of Yahweh, and we give thanks. We give thanks for coming through a cycle, and that cycle included so much. I mean, I know for many of us, whether it's work, hard work, emotional work, spiritual work, all of it is work. And what we do is, after that cycle of work, we are happy to embrace rest, So we give thanks to our Elohim for providing that cycle for us. And, we'll continue to honor that. We'll continue to do that to the T. This evening, we want to affirm based on the supreme mathematics for the day. All right. So for us, it's still 8:05. For those of us who are on the Eastern Corridor. All right. Safta just did her little dance. But we affirm that the knowledge we share and the culture that we keep will lead to our refinement. And that's based on the 14, right? The same 14 from the 14 keys, right? Knowledge, culture, all being born to power. And if you have not found that book, you don't know what it is, check out that book on Amazon by Chief Yuya. It is the 14 keys, very easy to find. But today's biblical offering is the study to show thyself approved unto Yah, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So this evening, Safta, if you want to just jump on and tell us a little bit about what we're going to dig into. Sisters, you can be right on time with this.
Yes, yes, yes. So exciting. We're going to talk about our earthly wardrobe this evening. And, as she was talking about the supreme mathematics, I had to jump over to A New Way, where we talk about our attire and our culture and, being refined. And just a little insert from the 14, from the A New Way. It says, knowledge of self is the first layer of clothing. How can we properly robe ourselves if we are unaware of ourselves? And we are clothed in our culture, and our wear reveals the tribute that we give to our civilization. So as we discuss our earthly wardrobe this evening, it's all about the layers that are put in place to reveal what we respect, what we believe, how we live, our lifestyle. And it's more than just clothing, which we'll get a little bit into this evening, because, as we were doing this bill, we talked about, what people see when you approach them or when you walk into a room, and it's not just what you have on, because there is something that goes before you. So we'll get a little bit more into that as we open up.
So we like to follow our teacher, or Jegna. Chief, I have to pause. She says Safta's Facebook page says she moved to NC. So she's officially East Coasting. Yes, indeed. All right. NC, huh? All right. So let's jump in and define things, right? Definitions are important because it lays the ground rules or the ground, level playing field, according to Akizak. Right? So wardrobe, let's get into it. Every time I hear the word wardrobe, I always think of war. I take the D off and I think robe. So I'm like, wardrobe, right? A robe or something that you wear when you go into war. I don't know. But that was, as a youth growing up, fascination with like trying to figure out things or words. And I've always stuck with that. But wardrobe is a northern, like old French word. And what they've done when you look at the etymology, they break it up into ward and robe. And ward is to guard, right? To guard something. I think of ward off. The word warding off, like when you ward off. So ward is to guard, and of course robe is like a garment, right? Your robe is your garment. So when we put those two together, what we have is a place to guard or house garments, right? So the original term wardrobe was really speaking to a place where you put your garments, right? And we all, we have cupboards and, dressers and bureaus and all these different words we use for it. But the way we use wardrobe currently, it actually refers to clothes. It includes clothes. And so that word expanded into a common use of just every day in order to refer to clothing that we wear. So it now includes and has expanded to clothing, right? And so when you think of wardrobe, we want you to think of all these other words. We want you to think of habits, haberdashery, right? Haberdashery. Actually, we want you to think of garments, which we said before, clothing. And, you know, as the Anu way kind of identifies it as attire. All right. And Safta just really read a very powerful piece that connects to our conversation tonight in terms of how we properly robe ourselves if we are unaware of ourselves. How can we properly robe ourselves if we're unaware of ourselves? So if you don't know who you are, you don't know that you identify as Hebrew, sister. You don't know who you are because you are lost. You're looking for something, but you don't know how to identify as Anu. Then you won't know how to clothe yourself. You won't know how to present yourself to the world because the way we present ourselves, it speaks to our culture all the time, all the time. And so that's why I found it very interesting that that knowledge and culture today actually equals to refinement, right? Power refinement. So yeah, there's just so much that we can dig into today and this evening. And so we're not just focused on we're focused on all wardrobe, but as women, we can speak to the wardrobe of the feminine. Wardrobe.
That's right. And you know, when we talk about wardrobe, as you were speaking, it made me think about the fashion industry. And it made me think about today's how everybody's into the different fads. And it's not a representation of self, it's a representation of the Western culture. And that is so important that we not be identified or caught up in their identity, because if we're going to represent our culture, what they speak about and what's the new fad or the new fashion or whatever's out there, it has nothing to do with our lifestyle. And that's why it's so important that, you know, I remember when the kids were in school and their friends was like all about the new Jordans and about this and about that, and you know, the clothes that they wear. It really did, um, to me, it spoke to the fact that they were so caught up and so lost in this culture. Well, when I say this culture, the Western culture, and it's so far away from who we are, what we represent, and why it's so important that the way you dress, it really speaks volumes about who you are, how you live. You know, and that was all new for me coming into a new, because I was caught up in that fashion phase as well, you know, and you know, getting rid of all those things and really coming to into a culture that the lifestyle you live, you wear.
Right.
You know, you don't just live it, but it's not just in you, as Chief Yuya says, or it's not just on you, but it's in you, and it's irradiating from the inside out. Is what ends up happening. So I just wanted to throw that in as we get into, um, you know, what the wardrobe is and what's really proper and what's not proper for us to wear. Because as we start, you know, going into this, another thing that the Anu Way talks about is the Anu woman should not wear pants or any garment that is designed or pertains to man. And you know, I did not realize until I came into a new and I began to get rid of all my pants. That was all my clothes. I only had a handful of stuff left once I started cleaning all that stuff out. But um, it did something for me inside when I transformed into wearing the proper clothing for a woman. That brought other things along with it. The New Way also speaks about a man. You know that a man should never wear any clothing that impedes his ability to swiftly launch into a defensive measures as the chief champion of his homestead. He's always on guard. He's always ready to defend and protect his own. You know, so it speaks volumes to not just our gender, but our responsibilities.
Right, 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 right. Because I mean, if our clothing, haberdashery is, a reflection of habits, then, what are the characteristic things that we do in our daily lives? Like, and how does that come through um, in our clothing? Like how we present ourselves to the public. I wanted to offer a precept. Deuteronomy 22:5 from the King James Version actually says, "The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all that do so are abomination unto the Lord, unto the Most High," right? Our Elohim. All right, unto Yahweh Shai, our Elohim. So important to think about that. We're not, the Anu way offers us foundational knowledge about our culture. But that foundational knowledge is not just pulled from anywhere. There are precepts to uphold and show that that culture is in alignment with Torah, is in alignment with what is considered the Hebrew Testament. And so, it's really important for us to break down things, show and prove ourselves, right, by breaking down things. So when you think, as I was reading and doing some research, and there's a lot there to read through and dig through. And like while studying, I realized that you have to look at we had to look at Near East, right? Near East culture and what people would wear predominantly in the Mesopotamian regions and things like that. That doesn't mean that they weren't specific expectations for Hebrew people at all. But when you think of geographics and you think of, location and all of that, it's important to consider why, some parts of the clothing were expectations for men and women. But when I was looking at the King James Version and trying to break down some of it, one of the words "wear," all right, and that phrase "wear that which pertaineth unto a man," that word actually indicates that there is a difference, right? There is a difference between what a woman would wear and what a man would wear. And, as I dug a little bit deeper, I looked at the idea of man being referred to as like one who's a warrior. And you just spoke on this, like he shouldn't wear anything that would not allow him to launch into swift so that way he could protect the family, right? So the idea is that if you adorn yourself or you're wearing clothing as a man, your clothing would have weaponry on it. Your clothing would be a representation of a warrior, right? And not necessarily feminine garb. And I think it's important to think about the times when some deities were worshipped, and they were worshipped by men actually adorning themselves as women. And the reverse is true as well too. Women would wear the garb of men, right? And apart from that, I think in addition to garments and clothing, we're talking about that, but one of the things that Anui identifies is that men should wear a beard. That was a distinguishing factor, between men and women as well. Actually, in scripture, historically is what I should say. I came across some information that actually shared men would hide by wearing feminine robe. And what they would have to do is actually shave their beards, right? So that way, of course, they look like a female. They look like a woman, right? And as I read that, I was like, okay, wow. So it's so obvious. It is so obvious that they were differentiating the way men presented themselves and the way women presented. how
Mhm.
important that difference was.
When you were speaking, it made me think about there were even in the Orient. I remember back seeing something, and I believe it was the Chinese. They had performers. They didn't allow women to perform, so the men would all dress up as women, and that's where all that thick white makeup came in at. And you actually could not tell, and they wore the geisha girl type wigs and all those different things, but it is in the Levitical law, which is part of why we are set aside, you know, to and we're just very distinguished between other groups of people and
Right.
other religions because we have been given direction on especially the priestly garments,
Right.
what has to be worn by men and women. And it was the cut of the garment. Um, Chief Yuya says that some of us are out here being super, what is that?
Heru-
Superheroes?
Superheroes.
Superoos. And our
Not Subaru, because that's a car, you know?
superoos.
Super Subarus. Okay. All right.
Superoos. Okay. And our
Subarus.
peace
Right.
drives must accommodate our calling. I like that. I like let's shift it into gear. You know what I mean? But yeah, thank you for
When
that.
he said peace drive, I think he meant peace robe. I think he says it lower down.
Yeah. Peace robe. Look, and I'm thinking because I'm thinking our the way we walk out of the house sometimes, come on, it will shape the way you think about yourself. It's like when you look good, your ego gets all in the way. You forget who you were representing, and that you have a certain walk and a certain strut. And to me, we should have that as representatives of the Most High Yah. There should be a certain, uh, I do want to say pride. We do want to wear our clothing with a certain amount of pride and excellence, the way we present ourselves. And I'll have to be
I am
honest.
trying to find, I'm so sorry. I'm listening to you, but I'm trying to find my cord.
Oh,
Oh my
I,
goodness. It is
I remember
fantastic.
before I knew, uh, you know, realizing I needed something and I might be right in the middle of cooking. And I would just run out of the house, dressed. We're not going to talk about how I was dressed. But yeah, I was not dressed properly. But as a new, I know that every time I walk out of the house, and even within the house, there's a certain way that I need to be clothed. And thank you for that, Chief Hugh. Yeah, I just saw that the original geishas were men. I remember seeing something about that, and I thought to myself, "What's that about?" Because their performance, the women did not perform. So, and Chief also says there were huge um, competitions between male and female geishas during the war. Um, and when I think about that, it really kind of throws me into the thought of why. Because as a new, we know we have roles, and as a new woman, I know that at no time I have need to compete with a man because his role is so much. My role has nothing to do with what he is, what he is giving. Um, she says, super ruse, under ruse. Let's get it done. But yeah, um, this earthly garment thing, it took us in a lot of directions, but it kept bringing us back to who we are. It kept bringing
Right.
us back to why we've been given the instructions we were given and why it's so important that our earthly wear that we are in proper attire. And for me, um, it really helped me to find the identity of who I am as a woman. Earlier we were talking, and for some reason, when Akoti Moreyah we were studying about, some of the scriptures, and I kept getting this image in my head, and I kept trying to shake it off, thinking, why am I seeing that? And it just came to me. That image that was coming in my head was the Teletubbies. And this was a little group of a cartoon that I refused to let my children watch. And I didn't know why, but they were all just really young when that came out. And now I know why that I did not allow them to watch that show, because the Teletubbies had no gender. There were no females or males. They were all the same. And in this society, it's trying to take away that which the Most High has given us that is most important. In the Trinity, we talk about the man, woman, and child. And if there's no distinction between the man, woman, and child, then, there's no family, really. Master Milik says those Teletubbies were creepy. They were creepy. But I kept thinking, why am I so offended by them? And I didn't even realize back then, but now I understand, because it took away the roles of who we are. And our dress speaks directly to our roles of gender and of positioning and representation. I mean, it speaks just volumes of everything that we represent.
And this is why it's important to actually understand that when we are modest, and when we are, like when we affirm that knowledge and culture leads to our refinement, um it gives us an opportunity to share to the world that there is a right way. There is a right way to live and function, down to the garb that we wear, that it is in alignment with the will of Yah. And, there's a separation there as well, too, right? I mean, I remember having some conversation with other sisters who kind of share, I had this experience, and people just treated me differently because of attire. And it is attire, because you probably had different experiences, probably the same experience, but probably several years before shifting into this type of attire, and you realize, oh wow, you treated differently. It might be age too. So if you're an auntie, you're an auntie versus your young thing. Let me just throw that in there. So, but that attire is like it is how should I say, an unmentioned rule. It's an unmentioned law, and it pushes people into a place where like there's an honoring and a reverence that happens. But as we talk about that, there's also that idea of fabrics, right? So the things that were made of cloth or threads that the Hebrews wore, like commonly, they were things like sashes, and sashes were belts. So sashes weren't necessarily the sashes we know of, because when I think of sash, I think about what do you call it? What do you call those pageant shows with this thing across there, the sash? And I may be wrong too, because let me tell you, though there's a lot of information out there, when you do the research, you have to read through a lot of journals to find them, and we only had a limited amount of time, but this is like ongoing study, right? But the idea of sashes were belts, and not necessarily the sash that we know, right? There's also robes. So robes, when you see the layering of robes, that they wore, it's important to know that as robes were worn by both men and women. And we'll get into the differences a little later on. But the fabric was important as well too, because most garments were made of linen or wool. All right. Oh, and I forgot to say turbans, right? The turbans were the head coverings that men would wear. And their turbans, though they would wear a fall very similar to the woman, now I'm giving all the information away ahead of time, but their turbans were wrapped, right? There's a way that it was twisted and wrapped around the head. And what is prominent is, again, a beard. Men wore beards and they never wore their hair long, with the exception of those who took the Nazareth vow, right? So those are distinguishing factors. And again, this evening we're talking about wardrobe, earthly wardrobe, but we're women, so we are, like pulling out what are some of the things that we wear as what's appropriate and what's modest. And I just want to give this, like, very few people, very few times you would see a mixing of the different threads. So I want to read from Leviticus 19:19, and then I'll pause after, because I didn't want to forget to give the precept. Ye shall keep my statutes. Thou shalt not let thy cattle gender with a diverse kind. Thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed. Neither shall a garment mingled of linen and woolen come upon thee. Neither shall a garment mingled of linen and woolen come upon thee. And then it goes into some more under these Levitical laws, but this just goes to show how that separation of fabric is important. And Chief has shared too before that this actually is a reference to not mixing, not mixing and mingling. So keeping and maintaining that life that's set apart is important, down to the fabric that we wear.
Actually, you hit right on the same thing I was thinking, because one of the things I wanted to pose, in the chat was a question of why don't we want to mix fabrics? Because in today's, when I start learning about not having mixtures and fabrics mixed, I couldn't believe how hard it was to buy clothes where the fabrics, when you start looking at the tags to see what they have, everything's got polyester in it. I mean, it's like so crazy. It's like, oh, I can't buy that. I can't buy that. And it just kind of eliminates, the things. And maybe that's not the style I should be wearing. So maybe that speaks for itself. But I think what it speaks more of, that now that that it's telling me, make your own clothes. That's what is speaking to me, because and I believe that is something that as a new women that we should learn to do anyway, because I actually I was actually looking at walking through the mall with my son. He went to get his phone fixed, and I stopped in front of the store window, Abercrombie and Finch, and the price tags on that stuff was crazy, but they had 100% cotton wear. And I thought, but when I looked at it, a $200, it looked like a long tunic. I thought I could make that. You know what I'm saying? And it's not going to cost me $200. But I just thought when we start thinking about how important it is, our wardrobe, then maybe we shouldn't always leave it to somebody else to make the things that we need to clothe ourselves in. I did want to read a couple things out of the chat as everybody's, kind of jumping in, because Alpha Woman, she said these things were strange, and I think she was talking about those Teletubbies, because Yafe said she had to give them gender because she needed order in her life. She needed to know who was the boy and who was the girl, and she would. I could see that. Ema Sequoia said those Teletubbies were weird. They sure were. And Chief said Polly and her cousin Esther, no enough sisters, should make clothes for their entire family. Show enough, sisters. I'm sorry. I was laughing at the Teletubbies. But this is Polly and her cousin Esther. Yes, Polly Esther. Show enough, sisters should make clothes for their entire family. And that is something that I'm like, okay, it is that time because the quality is going to come from the home. It's just like food, you learn to stop eating out and figure out your food tastes better than the stuff you spend your money on anyway. So that is something that I think it's time to move into, and it's just making our own clothes. That makes it much more sacred anyway, because again we're talking about reflecting. I miss Aki Isaiah. He had said here in the chat that he said your fashion is a realization of what you hold close to you as truth, and divulges the relationship between your spiritual and your carnal mind. And that's from the A New Way, and that's speaking exactly to the statement I just made. If we're clothing our sacred temples in, I mean, if it's that important, then we shouldn't be draping our bodies in things that are not really made for us, you know. And I'm finding out, I had to start taking baby steps, but I have begun to read the labels on clothes and see. And even when it comes to head wraps, I at first I just thought, oh, that looks nice. Oh, I'm gonna grab that. Or I'm gonna and even now, as we learn more, as they all say, when you know better, you do better. And at first it may just be stepping stones. You first got to get rid of the pants, and that's to those women out there who still feels that's a big part of their wardrobe. We got to step out of those things we've been commanded by the Most High, that we're not to wear things that men wear. And I tried all kind of things at first. I thought the big wide leg pants that look like skirts, and
You're not the only one. I
yeah,
mean, it wasn't me, but I'm just saying it. You're not the
yeah.
only one who was like, "Oh, this is nice and wide. It could pass."
No, no, that's not working. That's not working because what I'm learning is it's all or nothing. It ain't no half stepping, and that's what we learn in a new. That it's all or nothing. And yeah, sometimes you do got to take those baby steps and start to wean yourself, but it shouldn't take you 2-3 years to do it. You know what I'm saying? And I've been in a new, I just came up on 3 years. I'm coming up on 3 years. And at this point, I've begun to understand the importance of, making those leaps and, stepping away from certain things. And that wardrobe, it's just super, super important that we begin to clothe ourselves. And it's part of being clothed in the Word. And we'll get more into the spiritual aspect later. But now we're just talking about that earthly garb. And like Aki said, Isaiah said, he said, if you hold this is what you hold close to you as truth, and you can't play with truth. It's either a truth or a lie. I remember my mother used to make little statements like, well, I told a little white lie. There's no such thing as a little white lie. All lies are lies, and truth is truth. So I just wanted to add that.
And I think of the mathematics, right, for Yom Shishi. And I say Yom Shishi because it's about time to be Shabbat. So, but I think about again that idea of the five, right? That knowledge, culture, all being born to power, right? And power is truth, and that leads to a refinement, right? So when you think of what's refined, and again, I was thinking on this because I was like, yeah, well, refinement is not so bad, but refinement is civilization if we're thinking through the supreme mathematics angle. But if we're thinking sky people, Anunnaki, and the Sumerian creation story, civilization ain't that good, no. So it's which angle? So we're taking the supreme mathematics angle. So, all those who want to argue. But yeah, just that it's that refinement, and that refinement is internal. And yes, we're talking about the physical wardrobe first, because this is listen, we got instruction by Chief Yuya, so it's kind of like, no, start with the practical first, right? But we were starting with the spiritual first, because we know that the spiritual is actually what ignites what the physical is actually what ignites every single other thing. It's like a reverberation, right? But we can't identify with the abstract without identifying with the practical. So the practical is first, right? And that's the that's the blessing of having that instruction and direction given, because now we're able to build that dialogue and conversation about what the armor of Yah actually looks like, and why there's a reference to a belt, and then why there's a reference to other aspects that we'll talk about later. But yeah, again, that the point that you're making and that quote that you're giving, sharing, Aki Isaiah, is really crucial, because sometimes we might find that it takes a while to shift into what the cultural expectation is for what we wear. But what I find beautiful about this statement is that it's not going to matter. It should not matter, because what's going to happen is your earthly desire to do or wear a certain thing will actually diminish and maybe even fade away. A matter of fact, maybe it's not even about waiting until it fades away to do the right thing. Just do the right thing. And then in the doing, which is the wisdom, then that understanding comes, and then you realize, oh wow, when I dress like this, it actually it pushes out a vibration. It gives as I'm walking, like people are seeing a whole different person coming at them, and they interact in a different way, but again, that physical is a representation of what's happening, internally. And I think that's beautiful. I wanted to pause and ask the everyone in the chat, sisters included as well too, like, what are some parts of your wardrobe that you wear, that you realize adds, right? You've been able to pull that understanding from actually wearing it, and you've seen how it shifted and changed things in your journey and your life. Can you just, click that link and come join us on stage, because it's Shabbat, you ain't got nowhere to go but be in fellowship with us. So where else you gotta go? Nowhere. But just, join us on stage, join us or in the chat, and just share again what is one piece of your wardrobe. But if you want to talk about the whole thing, is fine, that you have shifted and changed and upgraded, so that's in alignment with the law, and you're realizing, hey, there's something here, because I'm seeing a difference. I'm seeing a difference, a shift in the way people engage with me, but maybe even in the relationship that you're building with Yah, right? Because I do think those are important things to share.
That's right. And if we go back over to the chat real quick, I see Master Millick says, not the bell bottoms. And Marjorie Marie, she says, cut those bell bottoms up and turn them into skirts. I did one pair. I did. They were, but I don't think I'll be wearing those anymore. But Chief Yuya says, some females want liberation, and they see wearing pants and tights as liberation, but they're constricting the energy flow of their power, power, universe. We both need plenty of genital liberation. I heard that. That's what I'm gonna say. I have learned so much about how I sit since I wear dresses more often. You know, it has that energy flow, as you say, Chief Yuya, and even the way I speak. I remember folks telling me, "Quiet down, you're a little loud." Just in getting excited in a conversation, my voice would escalate. Now that I have wear different attire, I want to talk softer as a woman should. I don't feel the need to be as loud, you know, but it definitely has changed my energy flow. Just the way I approach or I'm being approached. Um, because of the way I dress. And it's now gotten to the point to where I don't even want to run out to the mailbox or anywhere. If I'm in the house doing yoga on the floor or in my room where no one can see me, and I feel the need to throw a wrap around, a skirt or something around me to go even to the mailbox. But um, once you make that transition, it's funny because as I was packing to move, in the way back part of my closet, there was two pair of pants that I had missed. And and I think I purposely have missed them before because they were two of my favorite. But it was nothing to toss them at this point. And I had someone say, "Why don't you give them away?" It's because I said I don't want to encourage another woman to wear pants. So why would I give them to another woman? You know, but yeah, the energy flow is totally different for me. And that's coming from someone who, I had certain jobs where, I couldn't have saw myself even in a dress. So those were evidently jobs that I should not have been in the first place. But even as we exercise, Koti Moreyah, you and I were just talking about that. You know, there there's no excuse, because I kept thinking, well, some things you have to wear pants because that's the culture we came out of. But actually, no. For everything we do as women, there is a way to appropriately dress. And yeah, we were just talking about that.
Yeah. So there's so many things that came up as I read Chief's point about females wanting liberation, and they see that as wearing pants. That's because they already know that the pant pertains to man. So because you know that, you want to prove your equality by wearing saying, okay, I could wear the pants too. Like, but you do what you want to do. We doing Anu over here, we walk in a Hebrew walk over here, and that walk requires, understanding why you wear things too. Um, yeah, because the truth is, what happens and how do you feel, and how do you move innately when you are wearing what pertains to a man? Are you, like increased in masculinity? Do you feel like, you could take over the world from the perspective of a man? But speaking to the tights, right? Um, they're tights. So they're tight. So they restrict. So they form fitting. That's another thing too. So if it's form fitting, how does it give you or provide modesty? um I think you could let them in, Safta. I think you let me see, I know somebody joined us, but yeah, Akoti Yafe, I think she's there. Yes, she is. All right, cool. Greetings, Shabbat Shalom, Sister Yafe. Welcome to the stage. And
Welcome, welcome.
don't just come on and buzz
Shalom.
in. Okay. All right, so I'll keep going. Yeah, so the tights are yeah, restricting. And apart from that, like it doesn't allow breathing, right? It doesn't allow for your skin to breathe. Apart from it getting tangled up in hairs, if you have any, I can tell hairs. Um, but yeah, I think about that. And one of the things I remember sharing with you earlier is that I was having this conversation with another sister about, tights and wearing tights underneath. Um, and one of the things I said is, well, I don't know about others, but the tights are just very similar to um, what do you call slips, right? I'm sure there's another more dignified word for it. I don't know. Where I'm from, we call it half a slip. But these are thin, dark underclothes that you wear, or undergarments that you wear that helps to conceal. So if you're wearing something that's lighter, maybe it's just like how people wear swimwear that's cover over, but you want to funkify it to wear it in the street. You have to wear an undergarment, or else everybody will see everything that you're wearing underneath. And I do know sometimes people wear tights, but one of the things I said was, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's similar, but I wear the slip. And the person said, well, nobody wears those things anymore. It's like, no, I do. And maybe
Just
this is
say
too
it.
much
It was
information.
me.
So
I
I
said that.
apologize. Yeah. And
I said
yes, it
that.
was.
It's like you nobody listens.
Yeah. But the thing about wearing that is that it allows for the air to flow. You get breeze. It's an AC on the low, right? It's and also, but it allows for the liberation of the actual energy that you need, right? The PU that Chief is talking about, that yeah, it frees it up. It frees it up. So that's there are different ways to walk and to be modest. And I do think we do need more dialogue and deeper conversations about these things, rather than always coming with a defensive, well, what about this and what about that? Well, open up your mind to modesty. And if you do, then it lays a foundation for other things.
You
Um,
know, oh,
I was just gonna go to the chat just because I think Ima Sequoia said something that was really uh, powerful. She says, I think about how we wear our habits. Did you read this one? I wonder when we mix fabrics if it reflects habits of a person who mix things that should not be mixed, like meat and cheese. It's possible. It's That's true. Master Menelik says, fleece this, polyblend that, synthetic other things. Shopping is a whole experience. It's a whole new experience, because when you spoke about the Abercrombie, whatever it is you said, Abercrombie and Finch, I was like, yeah. When you go to certain stores, you realize you can't shop there. It literally puts a division between you and how you
Mhm.
live, and how you're adorning yourself, and the rest of the world. That's what I realized.
Mhm.
And if I think someone shared this, it might have been you, Yafe, that spoke about I think is it Donna Karen? Is it Donna Karen or Anne Klein, that
I
actually was a Jewish woman who started creating fashion for a Jewish woman? And
oh I don't remember. I, oh gosh, I
well,
can
I
see
should call
Eileen
names.
Fisher. I think it might be Fisher, but I don't want to say the names. But I don't remember. It might have been Fisher. I was gonna actually say something else, but you finish your thought.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Um, Let me see if I can get up to speed. And you can jump in at any time, yeah, Sister
Oh,
Yeah, for
okay.
joining.
So
Yeah.
while you do that, what you were just talking about, it actually made me think of. I was just having this conversation maybe a few strongs ago about like fashion, and how it like it affects our health, and I was talking about a specific store that like their whole premise is like being green, and so then what that means is they actually take um recycled plastic, and like the majority of all of their clothing and their garments is made out of plastic. And so when you said like when you talked about like the shopping being a whole new experience, I remember that conversation because I remember what I was thinking and what kind of like what it felt like when I was in the store, and I was like, I can't be here because like this is not something that I could none of the anything in this store is nothing that I could ever wear because it is all mixed fabric. And it doesn't mean that there are other places that sell mixed fabric, but like everything about that place, like there was nothing in there that was totally wool, totally cotton, totally linen. It's because it was all like 90% plastic. I kid you not, on the tag it was like such and such recycled plastic. I was like, how can you wear this? You could burn up. Like who's wearing this stuff? But clearly a lot of people because the store was packed. But the point about like setting yourself apart and actually being separate, it means that I'm actually, which is a good thing, actually I don't I'm cut off and others are cut off from me. You know, there's not a mixing and mingling of people who would be wearing those things or actively going to seek out those things because I'm no longer, not even I've never even purchased anything from this store, but I'm no longer, you know, going to be in this store because now I know like this is not anything that I can put on my body.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Chief says, well, after that, the point about wearing the pants and tights, well, liberated females wearing pants and tights, he gave Proverbs 7:10. Then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent. Hmm. Oh boy. She is unruly and defiant, and her feet never stay at home. Right? So yeah, a woman of the night, you know, walking night. And
And nowadays, you can't tell who's a woman of the night and who's not, because the way some women just dress daily, and you know, I, I've actually, and this is not just because as I've gotten older. Even when I was younger, I mean, I've had to double take at somebody, a female that passed by me, because they felt so comfortable being naked in public, you know. And I thought, matter of fact, I remember when, what was those bathing suits that came out with that little string that, you know, I forget what it's called. But I remember I thought my son was really young and we were at the beach. And I forget, thongs, that thong bathing suits, that's what they were called. I remember when those things came out, we were at the beach and we were walking, and his little head was on swivel. And I actually felt like we can't be out here right now because this is crazy. And at the time, I was not married, um, but I just knew that I was out of place, even as a woman, watching all these other women who were, they're basically naked. And I remember when that came out, I thought, wow, you know, so now there's nothing that needs to be covered up anymore. And at that point, I knew that I was going to have to be really on alert and watching what my daughters even wore, because they were in high school. And well, yeah, one of them was in high school. And I thought, this is bad. This is bad. And at the time, I had not thought about homeschooling because that was not the culture I was in. But this is why it's so important that, again, I have to keep speaking on separation, because when we mingle in a society and in a culture that is not our own, then we are not only exposing ourselves, but our loved ones, our children, and everybody to a culture that can, you know, that's just gone left. That's the only way I can describe it. Because in Proverbs, when the mother is speaking to her son and she's telling her son to beware of a woman, you know, who lays in wait for her husband to leave, and invites you into her home, beware of those harlots, more or less. Now it's like there's more harlots out there than there are women of a Proverbs 31 type woman, not according to the way some of the churches break it down, but what we really understand and know a Proverbs 31 woman to be. Matter of fact, on this past week's podcast, Chief really breaks down the true Proverbs 31 woman. And I've listened to it a couple times, and the more I listen to it, the more I understand that even when I was in church, it did not give what I truly understand that woman to represent at this time. I have a deeper and a better understanding. But yeah, it's like you don't. They're coming out of the woodwork. They go out to a club at night. Matter of fact, he spoke on that one young actor, Kiki Palmer, who just had a baby, and how she's up on a stage being serenaded in this see-through dress, and everybody's mad at her boyfriend because he spoke on it. And he said, yeah, you're a mother now. You're not supposed to be out there like that. And it's almost like, it goes back to what Chief said about, the woman wanting to be liberated.
Yes.
That liberation. But it's not really a liberation. To me, it's, I wanted to say exploitation, but because what it represents is, again, the adultery, the wicked side of not being mated, not, just, I don't know, free for all. I don't even know what they call it anymore.
But they don't care. They don't care. So we give them all this time, but they don't care because that's the culture they chose. So when we say culture, we're really speaking about something that I hold on. Like Isaiah's piece on fashion and how it's a representation of what we really hold true to us. Like if you hold a certain ideal and you are living by it, yeah, then your wardrobe is going to. So if you are bringing sacrifices and offerings to Ashtaroth and Astarte, then yeah, your wardrobe is going to be a reflection of what you are and what is the culture that you uphold. Our culture is different, and in our culture, modesty is an important part. I'll even read, because I was holding on to this piece, is 1 Timothy 2, 9-10. It really speaks about, it gives guidance on modesty. It says, I also want the woman to dress modestly with decency and propriety, adorning themselves not with elaborate hairstyles or gold or pearls or expensive clothes, but with good deeds appropriate for women who profess to worship the Elohim. And I know, we could go back and forth. People say, oh, well, this means don't wear this, don't wear that. No, it's actually saying dress modestly and let what you adorn yourself in be these things first, right? Don't let your adornment just be, oh, yeah, I have on all the physical things and so on. And I'm saying that because jewelry an adornment was part of what Hebrew women wore. And we're going to get into that. We haven't even touched those parts, so let's shift just so that we could get to the parts.
Okay, before we go into that, let's catch up on the chat so we can just keep everybody, we can just stay, because Margie Marie, she said, oh man, slips. She was talking about the slips. My grandmother would make me wear them as a little girl. And it was so interesting how that generation was closer to our original culture, even though they were closer to slavery. That's right. I grew up wearing slips. That was just part of what we wore, when we wore dresses too. And Chief Yuya says, I once had locks to my waist. I thought it was fine as a pro fighter because Lennox is it what was it? Lennox Lewis had locks too, but every time I had a match, I lose a lock. I saw my ancient African wrestlers were bald. Yeah, that's a lot of hair for somebody to grab onto, you
It
know?
is.
Wow. So,
It
and the new radio
is.
says slips are so functional. I wear them to this day. They even have modern ones, and I enjoy slips. Um, I'm getting to where I'm not so much as comfortable in the tights under my long dresses, but I like slips. Chief Yuya says mixed fabrics represent the chosen people mixing with what they shouldn't. I thought so. As we and that point got away from me when we were talking about the mixing of the fabrics. So the chosen people mixing with what they shouldn't. This is what brought on the destruction of a whole flood. At one point, Yah does not approve of diluting by way of mixing. That makes so much sense to me, about the mixing of the fabric. Is a representation that the mixing of the people was not allowed. So we should, when you were talking about wool and not mixing the wool and the linen, that makes so much
Mhm.
sense. Hmm.
It reminds me of that diverse seeds, like not mixing the seeds, like, because if you do, what's coming out of that soil, that you're mixing up what's supposed to, what you're putting in, what the man is putting in. And then it's like, well, if somebody else is also
Can
planting seeds,
we mute?
what?
Sorry, can we mute because you're cutting in and out? So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
gonna mute and yeah, go ahead, Akoti.
I was saying it reminds me of the scripture about diverse seeds and not putting in most seeds in soil. That mixing, we shouldn't be mixing because then what's gonna come out of it? If I'm going into stores shopping with everybody else where there's definitely are garments that I shouldn't be wearing because it is not it's immodest or it's mixed fabric, then what am I taking in by being in that environment?
Yeah, just to let you know, you're breaking up a lot. So what you're sharing is very choppy. At least for me, I don't know if the everyone else in the chat who's live can actually like hear, but I know it's like, choppy. It's almost like intermittent what you're saying. Master Menelek, actually, we skipped a couple people, so I wanted to go back, not exactly clothing, but he says, I used to have long hair. Mine grows pretty fast, so I didn't keep it functionally short. I also wear closed shoes more often just in case I need to kick someone in the chest. Okay. All right then. She says that scripture tells us that there is a prostitute uniform versus a wife uniform. Right, that's the Proverb 7. We should dress for our vocation. I have never dressed like a slave. I dress as a free king and a child of the king of elves. Whew. So how you dressing? Yeah, how you dressing? Are you dressing in jeans? Because those are work clothes, you know, worker clothes, slave clothes. um, Thank you, Chief, for that. The Dove Fly KM, greetings. I think I saw you earlier and I wanted to say peace up. So give thanks. Tell us some more in the chat. Join, give us some more. Uh, Add to the build.
Oh, Chief says, like you don't know what they were called, Safta. I ain't buying it. They had things in ancient Rome that ain't nothing new. Cleopatra probably wore an ivory thong. You know what? I forgot what they were because I thought they were just a little beyond me. Yeah, that was a bit much for me though. uh,
Oh,
are we caught up? I didn't want to jump
oh,
over anyone else.
no, we're not. We have a bit more. Chief shares 1 Corinthians 6:19, or don't you know that your body is a temple of the Ruach HaKodesh, which is in you, which you have from Yah. You are not your own. Indeed, indeed. And what we wear must be a reflection of that. Okay, so Master Menelik shares, what's wrong with? I don't see a problem. Why can't we? Modesty and prudence are seen as oppression and subjugation to be Babylonian minded, to the Babylonian minded. Yeah, and so what Caesar's give unto Caesar. So if that's what you are and that's way of what you're following, that's you over there. And it's not from a place of looking down at anyone. It's not from a place of wanting to be, pious or whatever. It's from a place of understanding, no, that is your choice, and it's unfair for me to judge if you're not functioning, to judge you based on my community guidelines and our community expectations. Your nation and what you follow as your culture is yours. It doesn't mean that I can't tell you it's wrong, because based on biblical precepts, you're out of character and it's off. Um, but in the same breath, that's, you know, yeah.
But
But and
that's
right is right and wrong is wrong. Go ahead.
no, that's just like as we were discussing earlier, and I was sharing with you that I was when I went back and I was looking at the Jewish women, as their garb changed over the years and they became more modern, they lost their head covering. Now they're doing fashion shows as Jewish women with, Jewish clothing that's adorned, in that jewelry and the flashiness we're told not to adorn in. And they don't have head coverings as they used to. And I thought that was interesting because, I've always thought that how does people modernize a faith that was written, uh, thousands or hundreds of years ago? Did he come back and say, okay, we're going to move out of Volkswagens and we're going to start driving Cadillacs? Or, I just didn't understand how that revelation would come about, because of course, as we were studying, we kept finding if we didn't say ancient Hebrew, it always resort back to the Ashkenazi Jew or the Jewish community that is not the same as the Hebrew culture that we subscribe to. But I thought that was just very interesting that in ancient times they wore their hair covering, or maybe that was when it was back when we were the true Hebrews, because that never changed and it still hasn't changed. But yet some religions and cultures, they move with the times, and I guess they think that's okay. Um, that's like, when they start taking, their truths and beliefs and they modernize them. So I don't know how that works for them, but head coverings for Jewish women were part of their garb and part of their attire. And now
Yeah.
it's not. So I just didn't understand why they lost that part of, the clothing.
Well, some do. Some do. Some do not. They are um not, some of them are not beholden to Torah and some of those expectations, so they don't necessarily, but some do. They follow it strictly, and so they do wear head coverings and things of that nature. So there, like there's a difference, I guess, similarly to, Christianity and the Catholic Church and all of that. But here in Anu, there are no offshoots, there are no sects, there is Anu, and so there's that expectation. I do know that we've been digging into but I don't want to say digging into, but we have been like studying and looking at, just different angles, but focusing on the wardrobe and what we should wear. We haven't gotten into all the different pieces, so let's just jump right in. So the very first or basic part of the earthly wardrobe is that tunic, right? The gown, right? And those over those are like overgarments. So there's a tunic, there's a gown, and there's also an overgarment. And there is a difference. So we'll talk about the differences between the female, what the woman wears and what the men wear. But the garments are really very similar, right? Very, very similar again. And we spoke about the fabrics before, but it's the difference is the length, right? There's a length difference that identifies or separates the two. I think I see Achoti Yafe joining. So I will add you again to the stream and probably remove the other. I'm not sure if that would help. Let's see. So you jump on and let me know. But yeah, so the basic again was worn by both men and women. It was a long tunic and or gown. And of course that was traditionally linen or wool, because we just spoke about the mixing. The Leviticus 19:19 kind of gives us that law. And it was a simple loose fitting garment, right? It wasn't necessarily tight and extended from the shoulders all the way to the ankles. Women wore shawls or cloaks as well. So that's an overgarment. So that would actually fit on over. So that makes me think about layers when we talk about layering, right? So we make it all a fashion thing. Sister Yafik, I don't know, I think it's me, but your screen is jumping a lot. I don't know if that's for everybody else. No? Okay, so no, but maybe it's just how I'm seeing it. Screen is weird. Also, I wanted to talk about like the different styles, right? The different styles and the differences between them. And then I'll pause and we could, jump in and share more. So the men's apparel, it went down to the calf, right? The calf area. And so it makes me think about the idea that men had to wear a attire that would allow them to defend as easily as possible. So if it's all the way to the ankle, think about, what you have to do, like wrap up all your stuff like this. Oh gosh, I just did that over your arm to kind of defend and do what it is that you need to do. So just thinking about the practicality of a long tunic and how long it would be for the men, their tunic stopped at the calf, and for the woman, Hebrew women, those stopped at the ankles, right? And that's really just the undergarment or the basic tunic, not necessarily the over pieces, which are the, like I said, the scarves and so on. The woman's garment always went to the ankles, like I said, and it was decorated. There was either a hood or some sort of head covering that was attached to their outfits as well too, or their wardrobes, right? And when I think of hood, I was like, it made me think a little bit on the hijab and how that looks, right? Very similar. Also, I think we spoke about that, like the idea of facial hair. That's not exactly part of the wardrobe, but it is something that I think is distinctive. And that's why in our new men do not, men grow their beards. That's what I would say. And then there's the jewelry and, all of the additional adornments. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little later on. And I'll pause here. Okay, I'll jump to the chat. Master Menelik says Psalm 1:1-2. Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, in the law of Yahushai. And in his law doth he meditate day and night, And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf shall not wither, and whatsoever he does shall prosper. And she says, you never saw me in no jeans. Modesty doesn't mean anti-fashion. I dress elegantly and need not show off this warrior king frame. Yah has gifted me with, unless I'm among my Ishas in private. Okay.
You know, that takes me back to the A New Way, because it says clothing should always be suitable for the moment. You know, when you're not working or getting all soiled, sully their garments, their appearance should be clean and groomed. And as we were studying earlier, we kept coming across in biblically. And I had that scripture where it talks about that we are to be adorned, you know, the glory and the honor should be represented in our clothing, and even the beauty for women. And I'm sitting here looking at achoti yafe because that gold is like kicking, and I'm thinking that it jumps out. It's you don't have to be walking around looking all bored and dumbed down. It can, you know what I'm saying, it can also complement you. And because we in a new are beautiful people, you know what I mean. And even as we were talking earlier, we talked about, when you're dressed properly, people see you coming before you enter a room. If there's a certain aura that goes before you. And I just happened to look down. She said that gold is what was messing up her cell phone signal. But it just makes me think about, sometimes just the presence, your presence in a place, it speaks volume, and how your presentation of who you are. So yeah, I just wanted to add that, because that was really when you were talking about the clothing, and how the women, even from the tunics, and the difference, even though they were similar, you can tell the difference between the man's garments and the woman's garments, which again is part of why we are so set apart. And I loved it when you said that, there's no dumbing down, no delusion here. There's no sex or separation. A new is a new across the board. As A-likes, we all subscribe to the same thing, and that's our clothing. And when you were talking, for some reason, I went back to, I remember when we came out of orientation and we were all on a community call and we were talking about makeup, and I remember some of us was like, what? We can't wear no makeup. I mean, even if we just lightly wear makeup, because this also is a part of our appearance, and I remember when I learned here in the new that when women wear makeup, it's like, I believe Chief said the word witchcraft. And I was like, witchcraft, and I thought, witchcraft. And I'm saying that because of achoti yafe. I remember when you said, I got to give away boxes and tons of makeup, and now I'm looking at how beautiful you are without all that. And I understand the difference of when we, I guess it is a form of witchcraft, because we actually change our appearance, from who we really are. And that is also a part of how women adorn themselves. Because when you think about in ancient Egypt, they wore so much makeup. I mean, even the men wore makeup. It was like eyeliner painted all the way, back here. And it was crazy. And I thought about, why do they do that, But we do the same thing. And now the new fad, I think, is the batty eyelashes. And I'm thinking, what's the purpose in all that? You know what I'm saying? because again, this is part of our attire. It's a part of how we represent who we are. And when you said that about Anu, I thought, yeah, ain't no faking and shaking going on around here. You are, you are. What you see is what you get, even though we're refining it and we're getting better. You know, we're not the same as when we first came through the doors, but we still got a ways to go. But yeah, this is a really good subject because I believe everybody who thinks about themselves and how they present themselves. And I remember I had a roommate at one point. That girl spent hours in front of the mirror, and she would change clothes about 5 or 6 times. And it took her about 2 hours to do her makeup. Just the makeup by itself. You're laughing. Did it take you that long at one point? But yeah, so again, it's just so important of Chief spoke earlier about the scripture that talk about we are the temple, and how we adorn the temple. It speaks volumes of how we respect and honor him that we say we that we represent, that we reflect.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start. Uh, we kind of like had this conversation a little bit when we did the womb room. We spoke about beauty, and there was the whole, you know, chat about like the makeup and stuff like that, and it being witchcraft. And I think we had like a little bit of even it doesn't just stop at the makeup. It's also like it can be the undergarments too, right? Like the ones that what they call it snatches you. They snatch you. Um Even in those. And so when I'm thinking about them, like there's, I don't think that those can even be made without mixing fabrics. So when we even think about like the undergarments that we wear, like even if it is like for those of us who don't like to wear slips, but there's things that you can wear underneath so that you don't see through, and let everybody know all your business underneath your clothes. There's things that you can wear. Like if you're wearing something like, that might be a little bit light and thin, like you need to wear something dark underneath. But it doesn't mean that you have to go and put on the garments that like snatch you up, because again, they're made with mixed fabrics. There's no way you can make those, or make those things without it being something strange that people put on, like especially if it like literally removes like a third of the girth. If that's what you're going for, it's like there's no way. But that I just wanted to like kind of add that with regards to like the witchcraft piece, and and like what we put on, how we clothe ourselves. And also like even like as you were speaking like about the makeup, I thought like even with that, like whose culture are we emulating? Like you mentioned like Kemet, like and how they used to wear makeup. And I think in one of our study sessions, Chief talked about like, when the Hebrew, this is why we getting punished. When we were living amongst people that we shouldn't have been living amongst, we started adopting what they were doing, putting tattoos on our lips, and all of that thing, all of those things. Even and when I think about that, some people tattoo makeup. There are people who tattoo eyebrows, they tattoo eyeliner. And I'm like, how is that even different? So when we're doing those things, whose culture are we adopting that we should not be adopting, and then moving us further away from the Most High and like where we're supposed to be? Well, yeah. It makes me think of that.
You know, I'll start with Marjorie Marie up in Ezekiel 16:10. She says, "Clothe thee also with broidered work, and shod thee with badger skin, and I girded thee up with fine linen, and I covered thee with silk. Um, I decked thee also with ornaments." And I as I'm reading that, I'm thinking about what the Most High said to the nation of Israel when he was that. I believe that's what Ezekiel 16 is talking about, how he adorned us. Matter of fact, it's earlier in Ezekiel. He said, when I found you, you were naked and covered in blood. And he said, but he cleaned you up. He's talking about the nation of Israel. And he talked about, and I can go, and I don't know if anybody can find that. It's in the Ezekiel. But he talks about you were naked and covered in blood, and he cleaned you up, and he clothed you in silk, and he put a gold ring on your finger. And, in other words, when he cleaned you up, he made you more than presentable. He didn't just put you in rags and sackcloth. He actually clothed the nation of Israel in fine linens and jewelry. And then he talks about, but yet they still went and prostituted themselves to the world. So yeah, I really like that, all of that part of Ezekiel, Marjorie Marie. He said, I put bracelets upon thy hand and a chain on thy neck. Yep. And I put a jewel on thy forehead. That's the one. Yep. And earrings in thy ear and beautiful crown on your head. So he's speaking of how he dressed up his people, and, it's so beautiful to me that he would give us a standard that we would live by, and that how we are supposed to represent him. Master, and then you say in 2 Kings 9:30, it says, and when Jeru was come to Jezebel, yep, heard of it, and she painted her face and tied her head and looked out of the window. Oh yeah, she was bringing the witchcraft for real. We've been learning all about the Jezebel and all her tricks and wiles. And I was hesitating because when I saw this, but I'm going to read this from our chief UEI. He says, if I wore a false beard, a penis extension, protective style, of course, blush to look healthier, muscle implants, and false nails to hide my dishealth, it would seem odd. That's how we see it on you. And that makes a lot of sense.
Until it was said to me, and it's, there's it's like a disconnect. Like you don't even think about it. Because I'll say, like, when I used to like wear makeup, it would be like, I'm putting this on, like, I'm enhancing what I already have. I didn't even look at it as like I'm changing what the Most High gave me. I'm changing my face, and it's so interesting because like I could sit and be like, well, if you're changing something like your gender, you're changing what the Most High gave you, you're saying that a mistake was made. It's the same thing, putting on makeup, in the dawning, or putting on things that drastically alter us, as like Chief said, like, but then saying like, oh well, it's a protective style. Oh well, I really feel like I look like this. It's the same thing. Changing what the Most High gave is just disrespectful. And I even thought, like, is that part of that pride? Thinking that I have no more to learn from the Most High. Like, if that's the case, that's why I would, go and like change my features and enhance, or do a protective style, because like whatever I was given was not enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this speaks a little bit to some of the dialogue we had even before we got on Safta, where we were talking about the disarming smile and the baritone voice, and just facial features and things like that, how we're given tools for the work that we have to do. And sometimes the tools, we want to muck it up, we want to change it, we don't like how it appears, we don't like what it is. So we add the muscle implants, right? And the implants in other places as well too. Your glutes were square and all of a sudden they're round. So it's like those are those are some of the things I think about when we talk about like that witchcraft, and augmenting and changing the body without paying attention to the fact that, yeah, there's that layer of dishealth as well too that we are hiding when we use some of those things, like you said, Sister Yafi, that snatches the body. um but we're also flying in the face of our Elohim, because what we're saying is, what you gave me, I did not pay attention to. I did not treat it with honor and respect, right? And so because I didn't, well, it's, rolls everywhere like a Rolls Royce, and now I have to put I have to put on something to keep it in place, right? But you disrespected the original vessel that was given, and now we want to hide it without honoring the fact that, okay, the vessel I was given, instead of trying to hide the voice, or instead of trying to make myself look a different way, ask myself, why was I given this thing? Why do I appear this way? What are the benefits, right? And not for me, but the benefit to the kingdom of the Most High. Like, how does that allow for me to work within the kingdom, to make it very much a thing within our community and a thing here? Yeah, I think about those things a lot. And again, not so much so we could say, okay, well, I am superior, though there is some form of superiority. I mean, Subarus, or, all those things that you said. But, not making a joke of it is a reality, like, not necessarily to identify and say, well, I'm up here, and there's that pious and loftiness, but just being able to say, no, this is law, and I am happy, I'm joyful, I'm ecstatic in following the law, and making sure that what I want aligns with what Yah wants. As a matter of fact, I don't have a want at all. It's just about following law. I really think so. And Chief, what you're saying is so true. Like this idea of I think about what people call, or used to call, metasexual, because these men would pamper themselves to the point where, everything's smooth. They'll go have, what do you call those things? I, yeah, do their eyebrows and all of that. And nobody's saying you can't pamper, get a bed oil. There are all these wonderful things you could do. I'm just saying that to give and offer yourself the grooming so that you can encourage and coax health into your journey, men or women, right? But at the same time, there is that idea of falsifying what you've been given, right? And making it to look a certain way, which is that witchcraft. It's deceptive. It's really deceptive. And yeah, I'll just leave it there. You spoke about, and that was a little bit earlier, because you spoke about the idea of our clothing or wardrobe being for the glory and honor of the Most High, and that's Exodus 28:40, right? And I think it's really important here to identify that this is to Levi, it's to Aaron's sons, who are of the priestly order, right? So I actually have a plant that I named Levi, because he stands like this, upright, straight, and then he has two little things going over there. But it's because I'm correlating the idea of being upright. So here are people who are upright, and they're being shown this is the standard. It says, Exodus 28:40 says, for Aaron's sons you shall make coats and sashes and caps, and you shall make them for glory and beauty. So while this is speaking of Aaron's sons, we all ought to understand that what our wardrobe is and what we wear should be for the glory and the beauty of the Most High, not just like us, like not, my physical beauty. So those are things that I think about. That's important when we have the wardrobe conversation, because that's at the forefront of it.
Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't even know. It's so interesting that I don't even know if this is related, but I was looking. I don't know if I could say I was reading it because it was an audiobook and it was on a video. So I was listening, looking at Revelation. Looking in, I don't know, at Revelations. And in the very beginning, like there's this group that was mentioned. And I won't get into it because I don't want to like move it. But the point is, this specific group, they were the words used like in the Greek Testament is like, you hate, this part I agree with you, kind of like you hate them as I hate them, right? And it was called the Nicolaitanes. I think it was Nicolaitanes. And we could probably get on a whole study group or midday about that later. But the point was, it was like, this group of people were compromising, just to make a long story short, like compromising with like the ways of the world, and making it like it was okay to do certain things and causing the children, like the people of God, to sin and not do what they were supposed to do. And yes, this is the New Testament, so they're talking about like, the converts, and as we know, like a lot of things were going on, and specifically the area that was being mentioned in the beginning of Revelations, like Asia Minor, right? So, and then we know like Paul, when he was talking to Titus, like he was all over the place, going to Greece and like knowing like everybody's acting out, they're doing crazy things, so we gotta gather them up and put them in line. And so this particular group, similar to a lot of the things that were happening in Corinth, or what was it, the Cretans, mixing what is supposed to happen in that compromising. And so like our the build right now is just making me think of that idea of like compromising with Babylon and compromising with the world in the mixing, whether it is our clothes, the actual garments that we wear, the fabric that they're made of, whether we're putting on makeup, and even like just mixing in general, just diverse seeds all over the place. And there's this I don't even know how to say it, like air now that we should compromise and accept everything. And if you don't accept everything, then something is wrong with you, or you are a horrible person. You're either a bigot or a da 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 da. And it's like, no, this is what the law says. It's just like you said, Achoti Moreyah. It's like, no, like what is first and foremost is the law. What is first and foremost, what I put on, is what reflects me as a child of the Most High. That's it. And I'm not going to compromise to make you feel, whoever, you, them, whoever, feel better, because that's what y'all doing now, So, we don't have to fit in. If that means like people are going to be like, oh, well, you're weird. Okay, so be it.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and that to me would be a funny thing for anybody to say when you look at the society around us, which is why it's so important that I keep saying being set apart, because in my mind, it always reminds me that I'm not a part of that. So I'm not obligated to look like, act like, or anything the way they do. And just as though it's an abomination to the Most High, it's an abomination. When I see it, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. That's an abomination. When I see someone who don't know what gender they are, I think that's an abomination. And the reason I think that way is because whoever birthed them or whoever brought them into this, into this world, did they not implant that truth? And if they did, how did that person get lost? So I guess, like I said, I'm always reminding myself of, and Chief said it many times, and I think when he said it, things really calmed down for me. instead of me going, oh, ooh, look at them. Ooh, it really calmed down because he said, they're doing it as they father do. They're just following who they're supposed to. That's what they do over there. And I think about when Yeshua said to the Pharisees, he said, you don't know me because you don't know my father. We don't share the same father. We don't share the same beliefs and standard and culture, and it's okay. And like Achoti, Moreyah, you said it earlier. Hey, you do you. I'm not mad at you. That's what you do. That's how you choose to live. And that's all good, because that fits for you over there. But over here in a new, and you have to really be a new to understand the honor and the pleasure. I mean, the joy that is in this community and in this culture. And more than even the honor and the joy, there's a freedom that you know we're not tied into a bunch of rules and regulations and things, like the church puts people in bondage in certain ways because they say, oh, you can't do this and you have to do that, and and you got to follow this law, and you got to drink this kind of wine on what is that they do, I forget what it is, but it's in the Catholic Church. They have to drink wine. Y'all don't laugh. The cracker and the wine.
Communion.
Yeah.
Communion.
So it's the I forget the Holy Communion.
Wine, but technically it's blood,
It's
because apparently it changes from wine to blood. So
yeah, it's supposed to be, but they be drinking wine. I'm telling you, I went to a church and they be drinking wine. It wasn't no grape juice.
It was, hey, it's fine. And sometimes it's Manischewitz.
Matter of fact, on the first Sunday, I knew where to go to get a glass of wine. Let me just stop. I'm just kidding.
oh my goodness.
See, that was then.
Getting it
But
like-
like I let me get back in my lane, because the truth to the matter is I find more freedom, I find more joy. And it's not like we're under all these regulations. It's a beautiful lifestyle, and when you and it keeps coming back to what we clothe ourselves in, you know, because matter of fact, I kept looking over at what Chief was saying here. He said, the woman is not to enhance herself. She will always appropriate a foreign culture model. And that's true. If we left our own device, and that's not the only thing, we get all left in left field when we don't have that. Her husband was charged with cultivating and refining her. He dresses her like he does the garden. Mm-hmm. And what that puts me in the mind of is in Matthew, when it tells us to have no thought about what we will eat and what we shall wear, and it talks about the lilies of the field were adorned more beautifully than Solomon, and all his garb. And when we think about, and it just makes me think about natural beauty, because and I'm learning that natural beauty is not only something a woman possesses, but a man also possesses a natural beauty that flows through that spirit and that light in which he cultivates and pours on his family. So I just it in the whole bill this evening, it keeps bringing me back to that sacredness of being set aside, set apart, because I think of all the people, how much mental illness is out there now. And it's because people are confused. They don't have a culture. And what does it say about you when you don't have a culture? What does it say about you when you don't know who you are, or how to live, or, it's like just being lost. And that's why it brings me back to the joy, because I don't feel lost in the culture and the community I live in. I know where I don't know what's, tomorrow brings, but I'm okay with it because of, where I'm planted at this point in my life, on my journey. And that's really crazy because making this move, to North Carolina has been, I didn't know, other than my community, because I kept having people say, "You got family out there? Who who you got?" Yeah, I got family out there. I sure do. And do you know anybody? I sure do. Are you gonna be by yourself? None of your other families, no, none of those people are moving. But yeah, where I'm going, I'm good. And everything has lined up according to that. Because when you move in a knowing, it gets beyond faith. It's a knowing.
Yeah.
And that's also part of that clothing. Go ahead.
Because I was struggling like, well, should I share this part or not? Okay. So I have said, and I hear so many other females say, well, this is what they want, right? This is what men want. They want, like, when they're talking about like how they're dressing or how they make up their faces, because they're also emulating images that have been put in front of them, right? But that's all just like Babylon, like circling in on itself. And so when the man comes and says, actually, that's not what I like, because there's still that investment in what Babylon is saying, we don't listen to what is being said. And then here's the kicker. Even if that is something that is seen as attractive or it incites some sort of, I don't know, because I'm not a man, but there's a category that we get put in. Like I think Chief said it before, like, there's the harlot and then there's the wife. So you can keep going on and not listening when he says, like, I don't like the makeup, or I don't like, all the witchcrafty things that you do, the abracadabra and alakazam things that we do. If you don't listen when he says, like, this is actually not what I like, and you just go ahead and be like, no, and you don't believe him, or have faith. I should say have faith that what he's saying is true and correct. Then you just get put in a different category. And then I think that's what we're not understanding is like, you either move like a wife as he's saying, this is what I want, or you just, you could just be with the Jezebels, and then you end up on the streets with the dogs later. Only hands.
But Jezebel comes in saying, "Where's the prince?" Like, so the truth is, you wear that and you ignore what the man is saying because you are not interested in what he likes. You're interested in what other women like, probably because who knows what's going on with you, or you just care about what you care about, which is to, as Chief has said, be a representation or a symbol of liberation, you know? And so because you're liberated, yeah, I'll do what I want. I'll wear what I want. I'll enhance myself because there is no other authority but myself. So when he says up there, like a woman is not to enhance herself, I'm done talking to all the sisters who wanna, yeah, you choose. I'm now convinced that you choose it because that's what you want. And I'm talking to, like whomever, like, yeah, because you kind of don't want that authority over you. You don't want that submission. And key in Chi's statement is her husband, right? Some of us are not married to our own husbands. We're submitting to the law of the land. We're submitting to, just the secular world, and that is the husband. So the secular world is what I take on as a culture. And, apart from that, it says her husband was charged with cultivating and refining her. I'm going to keep saying her husband, and that indicates that this woman has an authority over her. She is in submission to a man, to a right ruling man. And that's key, because if you're not submitted to a right ruling man, then yeah, he's not cultivating you, and you're not interested. You're not interested in having your garden tended, you know. Yeah.
And that's the whole
I said that your garden tended.
their garden tended to. Yeah, that's right. But the thing about it is that's where the modesty comes in at. Because what man, I mean, it was really obvious with that couple that Chief mentioned, because even though you got a woman who's on the, she's exposed to the world, her lifestyle, everything she do, she's bringing her baby on social media, she's in the limelight, but yet he's not liking her exposing herself the way she did in public, because now she's the mother of his child. Even in that lifestyle, what everything's exposed. People could care less about naked scenes and whatever the case may be. But yet, if a man feels that, the men that, and I'm really new to meeting men in the new terminology that I learned what men are, not just males. And what I've learned is that even males don't want everybody looking at a woman that is their own. They don't want everybody seeing everything, So the modesty, it's really something that most men don't want. They'll go out and look at women who are naked outside the home, but they're usually, if they have someone at home that are bearing their children and keeping their house, they don't want everybody else taking part in seeing all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's, sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's a role that woman has to play, and that role is not the harlot. So if you're gonna switch it up, well, maybe I can't even say switch it up, because if she did it, then that's probably where she was the whole time. But you're right. Like, there's everybody ain't got to know what I got, or you don't got to know what I like just because it's in here, but it's right here in front of you, and not even, and just like doing that, it's like, I think she said it, like, he probably did let her know, this is not what I want. And she went and did it anyway, Jezebel. And so he was like, I'm gonna make it be known. And then the reaction is like, oh, you should leave him. And then it's like, there's that, yeah, misery loves company. Like, you be single by yourself, and we hear that all the time. Like, the single friends, they want their married friends to be single too, and it's not cool. And then they'll go and ruin their household and their families. And you're supposed to be the viceroy. You're in charge of the house. He's in charge of the family. You're in charge of the house and everything underneath that. And so you'll go and mess that up just to be, so you could show your nipples, or just to, like, what'd you say, go from square to round, whatever. I guess that's like a BBL or whatever. But like, you'll go in and mess that up just for that, because you're thinking that this is what they want, and really, like you said, you're just going to do it to show off to other women, or to feel like you still got it to take to pull in someone else, because you're not really there with him mentally or spiritually.
And that's your choice. Moving on, because that's your choice.
I wanted to go back. I just wanted to go
back to, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to go back because I got the word I was looking for was communion is what they have. Master Menelik and Abba Harut both said it's communion. And they do that because, and Ima Sequoia says having strong drink in church, does the scripture speak against it? You can tell these churches that because they think Jesus is still making wine in their church. But that was, yeah, it's this was the wine was a representative, as you said, achoti, Moreyah, of the blood. It was the drinking of the blood, and the cracker was the body, and that was the communion. That's just one of their rituals that they do. And again,
And
I know we skipped over this one, but I did want to go back because Chief said something a little while ago about the prohibition against mixing fabric, and seed is about being set apart, of sanctification. Also disregards the completeness of the items Yah has given us. Wool needs no help or synthesizing. And when I saw that, it just, my mind just started to work, because as I've been sitting here, and when we talk about the earthly guard, that being set apart piece is one of the main things that stands out to me, you know. And mixing fabrics and seeds is about being set apart, of sanctification. So that's a part of it, you know. Against the mixing of the seed. And like he said, he had a people that he didn't want mixing with everything and everybody. And that to me speaks so much about cultures. We can't mix our culture and be true to the Most High Yah. It's just no way we can do that, you know. And that's why in Solutions, it talks about, you know, the two different cultures coming together in one house. They're going to fight. There's going to be a war there, you know. So, you know, the whole evening, it's really been speaking for itself. Being clothed in culture is correct, Margie Marie. Um, that's what this is all about. It's more than just, you know, what you put on.
Mm-hmm. It's like that 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You can't do it, and that's why you'll lose, is because you don't have both feet on the square. That's why the other one will lose, because the other one, the Babylon is very sure in what this is, what it is. This is what we do. So if we are not sure in our walk, then it's gonna win every time.
so we yeah, this is hmm it's a couple layers deep, right? And I say that because we could say, yeah, our walk, right? Our walk, our talk, our thinking, right? Our mind. Because this is where what I speak originates, right? It's here, right? Here. So, you know, we could say that, you know, and speak about being single-minded, right? And I think that's important, single-minded, you know, not just having single thoughts or uh, focusing on one culture, but single-minded in everything, in everything. So it's not just the adorning, it's not just in the professing, but it's actually in the living of it. And that's for everyone. And I'm saying it because, you know, as we go forward with the build and the conversation around earthly wardrobe, we're not finished, and we're not going to close off earthly wardrobe this evening because there's just so much more to actually talk about. We're going to come back with another 2 layers of clothing, because we've only touched on the tunic, right? We've only touched on the garments that are the tunics and the outer garments. And even that has brought us to so many other pathways of thinking and conversation and dialogue. And I give thanks to those of you in the chat coming with the biblical references and the precepts to add on, because we are even seeing like some of what you have, we have. So it's like, you know, but a lot of what you are sharing, some of those we didn't have. And that's what our fellowship is about. It's that engaging piece where you come and there's that edification. We're all learning from each other and you're adding to the pot, you know. And we're not just here, you know, giving. So I am grateful that we have sisters who are in here and adding and the brothers are expanding, and thank you very much for that. But yeah, we're gonna come back, right? I think we're gonna look to close because it is 10:05. And I know that I'm grateful because there's so much in the chat that we could pull on, and the IC power her. What? He hadn't mastered her with his mind in order to bring her to hey, talk about it. No, he did not. So now you're asking for something that you should have been demanding from day one. But that's a whole different conversation. It's not the place. Is that the men them have their conversation. It's not a place. But that's the reality. That's a reality. So I don't know if you all have any closing statements. Master Menelik says, like she said, it's the aesthetic of the dominant culture. Yep, very, very true. But that dominant secular culture is not what we're, living and what we're sharing with everyone. It's something special, and it's for our chosen people. And if you are, willing to, take on all of those parts and aspects of the culture, you just beginning with the wardrobe itself, like that's a simple place to start. If you appreciate what's being shared here, you appreciate a lot of the cultural aspects that we're sharing with you about Anu, and you want to join, head on over to anulifeglobal.org and register. And we have a retreat coming up, so you can kind of peek into the veil of things and see behind the veil of our community and see what that's like. But don't just come to see what it's like. Come to give to the community. Come to offer, and come to share with us, and enjoy what the activities are, and those spiritual moments, the bills, the conversations, the dialogue, and the new layers of knowledge that are always shared with us during that time. And for those of you who want to share and jump in, let's go share. But when we come back, we'll be covering head coverings and adornments. All right.
So we still going, right?
No, we going off. That's
Oh!
Yes, we,
off.
yes, it is. This has been awesome, and like I said, every time I go through one of these, I learn so much. And Chief says here, he says, and if you come to the retreat, put some clothes on your behind.
Yeah. In the FAQ, there is a piece where it talks about like, what should I wear? Everybody should go read that.
Yeah. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Peace.
Thank you all. Thank you, Toya. Thank you, Marjorie, yourself, thank you for joining us. And I think there was the Dove Fly KM. Thank you again. Master Melek, thank you, Akizak, and I think Abaheru. Peace, everyone.